Hello, everybody. Sorry, I've had kind of a crazy afternoon. So we'll get started in a few minutes as I'm getting set up here. Hope you're having a good Sunday. It's a pretty crazy Sunday for me. Had a midday soccer game to go to. That's why I'm starting my stream late. And then after I got home and I tried to make some lunch, ended up breaking a piece of glass, and it was a whole thing. Kind of a struggle to get it cleaned up, and you have to be really thorough when you have pets. So we had to make sure that we had gotten everything up before we let our pets back into that space. So that was not fun. But here we are. We're starting, and let's see. Yeah. Okay. So last week, not last week, 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm going to be eating a little chocolate. It's going to help my mood, and we'll get through the stream together with chocolate. Um, 2 weeks ago, we added health bars. We had added damage events. So we were starting to decouple the collision systems from the damage generation systems. And there are some, as I understand it, there are some drawbacks to doing a bunch of events, but this decoupling, yeah, we'll get through it with chocolate. Hey, Chris, good to see you. This decoupling will help us make our systems more extensible for the future. So if we wanted to do something else with our damage events, other than display the tick as we have as we did 2 weeks ago. For instance, maybe we could do like a on spot special effect or something. So that's just an example of what we might be able to do. But by decoupling it with events, we might get the processing of that event deferred until the next time through the run loop. But that's going to be 1 frame approximately. So I'm not that concerned about it, especially if we're not trying to base our mechanics on like frame or subframe precision. If we can do something over 2 frames, that's like good enough as far as I'm concerned. So let's look at that as I get my chocolate. And we'll get started coding. Okay, I was looking at the Git log because it has been 2 weeks. Yeah, so we did a bunch last time. We made the enemies generic, right? So they were more data driven. We added the health bars, which I think turned out really well. We may go back and like add health bars to the enemies. I don't know. And then we started to emit damage events on collisions, and we displayed the damage tick in a little bit of text over the receiver. So just to refresh my visual memory, let's do cargo run. And it's got to compile everything again because I think I did rust up update in the last 2 weeks. So things have changed. So we might go into generalizing the weapons, or because I think we kind of handled this thing in our to-do. And then we can start thinking about, one thing I want to start thinking about is spawn behavior, because what we had done previously is we had first like 10 episodes or something of this series, we had the enemies spawn randomly on an interval. And then we got into LDTK, right? and we started looking at, well, maybe what we need to do is put these enemies in the world, because then when we're in the LDTK editor, we can do things like set properties on those, such that we don't have to edit the game code itself to change those if there's like a balance problem, or there's a slight behavior problem that we can tweak with the with just data. It saves us doing stuff like writing RON files or TOML or something to supply that data. The flip side of it is that LDTK doesn't care about when your entity is spawned. It's just there. So we probably need to come up with something where enemy spawns, they're delayed. So maybe we'll do something where the we move it off the board and disable it, or we make it invisible and like disable all the systems that would make it move. Something like that might be useful. And then when we're at the point, yep, here we go. So you can see we got the damage indicators, and I'm dead. That was a tough level already. So we what we don't want is like the player coming immediately into this situation where they're spawn in the middle of a bunch of enemies who are like basically converge on them too fast. We want some outplay possible. So what I'd like to do is give the enemies some kind of like spawn timer. And I'm wondering if we can do that with LDTK, which I need to open. But in the meantime, let's think about generalizing the weapons. I would also love to think about menus at some point, because we'll want to have more than one level. We just have this level here, but if I wanted to go to the world and create a new level, we are just in level 0. We don't have anything else. So let's not mess with that right now. Okay, we can quit the game. It'd also be good to have a game over state that is kind of related to menus. So, and here, let me quit that. I don't need messages open or any of this other goop that I forgot about. Okay. So if you haven't followed along, be sure to check out my GitHub, chunkribs/survivors-game. This is the code that we're working on. Okay. So we can look at, I think the weapons were in the player, right? So we should maybe think about defining some, maybe like a constant hash map of weapons, or something like that. We need to be able to give the the player just has this generic weapon thing, but it's not saying what kind of weapon it is. Also, it's kind of weird that the component on the player is a weapon. So maybe let's think about maybe this is a weapon they have. We might want a collection of weapons, for example, in Vampire Survivors, and like on Crafty Survivors is more like skills that you can trigger or choose not to. But on Vampire Survivors, you basically, when you get a weapon, it auto fires, but you can have more than one. So we'll want to think about the structure of this. So we might let's start with making an enum weapon type, and we'll derive. This is not a component, right? But we will derive debug and default, and then right now we have the dagger. as the default weapon, and I think that we'll put weapon type. Let's turn this into a struct that's named fields rather than a tuple struct. Except we're going to use word kind. And we'll use this is the cooldown, right? And then in here we need to fix this. I want to see if the Rust analyzer will help me with that. No, I should have done it separately. Okay, so that's the timer, the cooldown, right? And then we'll say kind is default for now. And let's see, we're missing that, right? Okay, actually just have too much there. There we go. And we could, the main thing I want to do there is we need to make an association between the name of the weapon and these constants. So maybe what we'll do is we'll make a weapon spec debug clone find. It doesn't need clone necessarily, but so this is going to define how the weapon works, and we'll just pull in the dagger stuff, and we'll make a from implementation for this into a weapon spec, and we'll put those constants in there, I think. Or maybe we'll just make a new method on weapon spec. Let's see. Okay, so we definitely need the speed, which is going to be an F32, right? We'll say spawn distance, which is probably an F32 as well. Yep. 32 damage. We used U32s, which I think I may want to go through and change all that. And then I don't think the health is actually necessary, but what we'll do is when we'll just give, all weapons this like one hit health, so that they despawn when they hit anything. Okay, and let's see, we can get rid of that semicolon. And then the other thing I want to do is we want to have different spawn behaviors. So we might, for instance, want, right now we have these daggers that we're throwing in 4 directions, right? We might want one where the weapon fires only in the direction that the player last moved. Or maybe there's a kind that's sort of a shield that spawns and it doesn't actually collide with anything in the sense that it's moving, but it would spawn a bubble around the user, around the player. I'm thinking of it like in Vampire Survivors, there's the garlic weapon, which is hilarious as a concept. But it puts a shield, or an area of effect around the player that ticks on an interval. The interval is pretty small as compared to other kinds of weapons, but it also does less damage. And as you level it up, it gets to be, it gets to have more damage, wider area of effect, and then also tick more often. So yeah, the garlic. When I unlocked a garlic, I was like, oh man, this is. Even though like the player that starts with it, the character that starts with garlic and Vampire Survivors, um, it kind of sucks because he moves really slow. But for the first few levels, you can just sit there and let enemies run into you and level up really quickly. It's great. Um, and then when you get it fully maxed out, and or you get some of the other power ups, it's pretty nutty. That and the pentagram in Vampire Survivors, they're kind of a cheat code. But luckily, the game is designed well enough that they ramp up the difficulty as you get more powerful. So um, it's a really good design, and it makes for good replayability. Okay, so speed in that it's moving. Um, Interestingly, we have the cooldown timer separately. I almost want to say that we should make that part of the weapons spec, perhaps. Hmm. We have some design problems here because I would like for instance, if we go that route of the player can level up, they can get more powerful, the enemies get more powerful, etc. You'd like to have things like cooldown reduction on abilities. Um, so maybe this is just information for the spawn. Um, and then the other, so I think what I was trying to get to with um, with this discussion about the garlic versus the daggers, and and maybe it's directional. Probably what we want here is we want a weapon spawn behavior. I don't know a better name for this, but it might be something like so with the dagger right now, we have let's say 4 directions is one of those behaviors. Another one might be we're going to derive debug default, etc. Clone, maybe. I don't know that those are necessary. Clone copy. Thank you. We might want to do like facing. So it only fires in the direction that the player is facing or was last moved in. Obviously, on ours, like the player looks like he's going the same direction always, even if he's moving to the left, which is something we can also rectify. But we can flip the sprite, which is something we should do. But we might also want to do something like radial. Or radius. I don't know. Or there might be random. So let's say random. There's a weapon in Vampire Survivors. I think it was the. And this looks like a little gem. I forget what it's called exactly. But it fires out in random directions, and then bounces off the walls. A certain number of bounces. So that might be something that's useful. Okay, so then let's say let's just call this spawn, not spawn distance, but distance, or radius or something, and then behavior is weapon spawn behavior. So then we can do. Oh yeah, let's do default is this. Okay, not strictly necessary, but maybe it's easier that way for us. Okay, so we're gonna say input from weapon type for weapon spec. Um, and maybe let's go from a reference. I don't think that we want to we don't want to consume that. Although if we do make it, yeah, actually let's just make it copy. That's the easy way, easy mode. It's just an enum. It's going to have very little data in it. So um, we might do something like if these weapons can be leveled up, they might start to get some fields, at which point we probably want to remove copy. Hello, Lucky Luke. God, I can't talk today. Why did I stream? Okay, so what I want to do is go from this weapon type, which we only have dagger right now, um, value, and let's fill match arms. And we'll take these constants, and I'm going to delete them here, and I'll put them in here in comments, so we can just copy paste them. And what we want here is a weapon spec. Self, fine. Fill the struct fields. So the speed here for the dagger is 100. The spawn distance was 16, so 1 square basically in our tile map. Damage is 5. Health, we remember we were going to say all of them have just 1 health. That may not necessarily be true. We may change that later. Let's just go ahead and put that in there. Even if we don't use it, it's fine. Okay, so then we'll do health is 1, and the behavior is 4 directions. I maybe want to rename that to cardinal directions. I don't know. UL UDLR. Okay. Right. So then when we get more kinds of weapons, maybe we can let the player select the one they want at the beginning. We can change. We can change this to put in the new behavior. Okay, so this is captured in here, and now we're going to have to go down and change the system that spawns the weapon. Fire weapons, where is it? All right, so we're going to have to generalize this. We'll come back to that. So throw weapon. Okay, so this is not weapon dot, but it's weapon dot cooldown, right? That looks a little better anyway because it's not a tuple. It's named. And then we're going to have to think about generalizing this. Remember we made this dagger bundle using the sprite sheet. We might want to do a from implementation on weapon type for a texture outlet sprite. Yeah, so let's think about what I'd like to do is go from that weapon spec and get like a list of transforms and velocities. Right? That makes sense, I think. And then let's go ahead and rename this weapon bundle. And we have this dagger struct, right? But I think what we want to do, and it's over here in health. Yeah, I think we're just gonna have to make the changes here and then go back and fix things. Um, let's go to that and let's rename that to projectile. Um, yep, and you'll see why I'm doing that. Um, projectile, and it's possible it's not a projectile really, especially if we talked about the doing damage in an area of effect rather than as a projectile. But for now, maybe we'll just call this projectile. And then we are not concerned with yeah, we're gonna have to redo this. Then we're not concerned with what kind of weapon it is. The kind of weapon should only affect what the sprite is that we put into the world, and also the other parameters. In the end, we don't care as long as over here, you know, you have handle collisions on projectiles, right? Um, and then uh, they can take damage. No, not knockbacks. Is it in health? Yeah. So projectile can take damage from an enemy, and enemies can take damage from projectiles. That's all. That's all we care about right now. Okay. So we're going to we're gonna have to think about the collider. Maybe maybe we will have a thing that gives us a collider for each weapon. Big refactors going on here. Okay. So let's start with let's go up here with weapon spec. And let's make a method on it, which is to give back the information we need about the spawns. And I'm tempted to make this an iterator. Um, so although it's going to, if we do facing or random, well, random it's not. Facing, we're going to need some information that we don't have here yet. Four directions, we don't need the information. Random, we don't need the information. So maybe what we'll do is we'll just implement four directions and random, and then facing, we'll just say, hey, there's nothing. We can figure that out later. Um, but so let's. I'm just going to call it spawns, and this is going to take self, and I want to make it return an iterator. And the item is going to be what we want is a transform, a velocity, a damage, and health. Let's see if there's anything else that's needed here. Oh, and also where did it go? Throw weapon. Okay. We need a texture sprite. Yep. So we have the transform, That's important. This can be constant because we're using the same tile sheet, right? We need the sprite and the transform and the velocity, as well as the health, because we're gonna make a we're gonna make a bundle here, and that weapon bundle is gonna have a health in it. Oh yeah, collider. So we're basically, maybe I just make it return a weapon bundle. Hi, Justin. Good to see you. It's howdy doody time. The thing is, you know what? I think I'm trying to make this too complicated to start. We're just going to implement what I'm talking about here in this this system, and if we need to split it out and refactor it, we'll split it out. And the main thing I want to get to here is, we're going to replace everything inside this just finished, right? Um, so let's comment that out. Um, and then what we'll do is we'll figure out what we need to do, and then we will pull those things into methods or into implementations of traits. Okay, so we basically know here that the essence of this is try to throw a weapon. If the cooldown timer on the weapon ticked over, then we'll go and do our logic in here. So let's I don't know what this is going to be yet, but we're going to match on weapon that kind. Actually, we're gonna say spec, and this is our weapon spec, right? Into, we're gonna convert that. And so then we can do, let's say, let's make a transform like we did before, right? And right, because this is not a mutable reference to the player, we're not changing the player's transform, we're just copying it here. I'm pretty certain that transform is, no, go to type definition, please. It's clone copy, yeah. Like, it's a little bit big for copy, let's be honest. You got what? Like, you got 3 F-32s here, you've got 4 here, and you've got 3 here. That's a bit bigger than a register, but whatever. It's about ergonomics in this case. So, okay, so we're taking the player transform, and then we need to match on the spec dot behavior. Yeah. And then we'll let's borrow that. So 4 directions is what we did below, right? And I think what I want to do is, I mean, we kind of need to do this. I'm trying to find what is the thread here that's the same, and it feels like I need to get some stuff out of this to say, what I want to say is this is like, for lack of a better word, we need some kind of data that comes out of here to tell us how many. So this is going to be a vec of something, right? And honestly, we're not going to implement facing this time. So we'll just do vec of that. We don't have our information in here about which was the last direction the player moved. That's something we'll have to change if we want this behavior. For now, it's not going to spawn at all. So player will die. The thing about random is what we want random there is the direction that the projectile is fired, and the yeah, and anything else in there. Maybe it has some acceleration on it, but what we don't need out of there is more than one necessarily. Okay, we'll figure out what this is. Let's take this and let's start to make a map, iter into iter map. And what do we want here? And that'll tell us what we need to do on the other ones, pretty much. We'll do collect at the end. So here we have a direction, and we did have we did this multiplication of to get the rotation. Maybe we need to do enumerate. Right, so let's see, let transform player transform, and I'm going to need to put curly braces in here. And we do, and here's where we can make use of what's in this spec rather than this constant, right? So we have the direction times spec dot distance, right? And then we do, this needs to be mute. And then we do the same thing we did below. Quaternion from axis angle. Yep. And we're rotating around vec3z, because z always goes towards the camera. And here as f32, standard f32 const frac pi. So, no, frac pi 2, not 2 pi. Rotation. And that's so that the points of the daggers point in the direction that they're fired in. Okay, so we need the transform, and we need the sprite, and we need velocity. Okay, so let's do velocity is going to be this, except we'll use what comes from the spec. Speed. Okay, and then we're going to return the transform. And this is just about this. Let's call this spawns. I think that makes most sense, and then we can put the other stuff elsewhere. So we need transform and transform and velocity. That's it, right? Yeah. Okay, so we know that this is just going to be a vec of transforms and velocity. velocity. And then what we can do is on random, we can, okay, what's wrong here? Oh, right, so direction. Oh, I need to do, this is I, direction, because we did enumerate. Okay. So then on random, we can do something like, we can pick a random direction. So we'll pick a random angle. Do I have the rand crate? Yep. Random. Okay. So that uses the thread RNG. And we want the F32 version. Is that right? Sure, fine. What if I just do standard F32 const pi 2 pi or tau. I remember math. Let's go to the definition of this. Okay. Abstract. Fun. Okay, so thread rng.gen. So what does this do? Return a random value supporting the standard distribution. Okay, so I need to give it a type, I think. F32. Of course, this is wrong. We just return. Okay, so now I have an angle, and what I'll do is I'll do quaternion from axis angle vec3z and give it angle. And then we need to get the player's transform, because we'll just spawn it right at the player. Or maybe what we'll do is we'll take this as both a rotation. Let's see, maybe we can do a vector. Yeah, okay. So let's do mute transform like we did above. Player transform. Okay. And then we want to do transform rotate. The rotation. Okay. And for now, let's do, let's just return transform velocity default. And then we can get the compiler to calm down just a little bit. Needs to be a vec. Okay. Because what I want to do here is a couple things. We need to get, we'll use the from direction speed. Remember, we have this direction. Yeah, so we need to get the direction here. And this is vec. Can we rotate that by a quaternion? From angle? We can do vec2 from angle. Yeah, we can do vec2 from angle, extend 0, and that gives us a vec3. We can direction, and here we have the spec.speed. And then we can also take we can translate. Okay, I did something like this, right? So we can do translation direction times spec dot distance, and that gives us the same thing as what we did above with the 4 direction spawn. I'm gonna put it up above there. Um, yep. Okay, so now we also have a random behavior. Um, okay. We might eventually generalize this into, other kinds of cardinal directions, but yeah, the main thing here is that um, we've got some uniformity between that, like, gets the essence of this spawn behavior that we had hard coded before. So this is still kind of clunky. Um, I would love to kind of make it a method, right? Maybe we can extract that later. But the thing is, we would need this would need to take the player transform, or it could take an origin transform, and then we would use that, or sort of like an affine or something, and use that to apply to the player transform on each of these. But that also feels kind of clunky. So we've got a lot of code here, it feels like, but um, I'm not as concerned about it. So now what we need, we have the spec still, right? The weapon spawning spec, whatever you're calling it. So we need to do um, the other thing that we need here, and it doesn't need to be here because this is just concerned with these two things. We need to know what the sprite is. So let's say sprite spec dot kind dot web. No, it wasn't spec. Was it? What was it? Weapon dot kind. So we only have one right now, but we can do this. And then as we get more, we'll put in different sprite numbers. Okay, so now that we've got all of that, what we can do is we can for transform velocity in spawns. Yep. We can do commands. That was for Justin. Is it, what would we call it? Weapon bundle, or do we name it? Yeah, we called it weapon bundle. Bundle. Commands. So here's where we're able to reuse this stuff a bit. So the sprite sheet bundle, like we did below, we have the texture atlas. It is going to be sprite assets dot tiles dot clone. That's just a handle to that asset. The sprite is we defined above, right? And I believe this is copy as well, so we don't need to worry about cloning it. We've got the transform, and we use default. Movement, we got the movement bundle, and we have the velocity, right? So we can reuse that. And then default. And now we need to adjust our default up here because this is just wrong. I don't know that we defined default. We did derive default. So honestly, I feel like the other thing we didn't do is collider. or damage, or health. So we have this spec here. We haven't talked about the collider yet. I feel like that's going to be a bit more statically defined, but we can delete this because we've covered everything here. We just haven't covered the things that we were doing implicitly before. Okay, so maybe we don't have default. Let's fill out the rest of the struct fields. Okay, projectiles, fine. Collider, yeah, let's leave it to do here. But this we can do health new and give it spec.health. And this is collision damage new, and that's going to be spec.damage, right? And then we don't have to worry about the default. We can get rid of this. Those constants don't exist. Okay. Yeah, unreachable. I think we had 8 and 13. But let's put it to do here because we want to make that based on, oh, this one is moved, and that's not clone, or that's not copy, really? It's not copy. Oh. Okay, so it's that constructor just gives you the index. Okay. Well, no big deal. So we might be able to do that in our spec up here. Maybe we have a collider in our weapon spec. Yeah, why not? It's not a bad place to do it. We had 8 and 13, I believe. Yeah. Okay, so now we have a collider. Clone is not implemented for collider. We don't actually. Well, we do care. Why is it not implemented for collider? We should have that. There's no problem with that actually being clone. Yeah, it's just vec2. Okay, so the collisions, they're going to be empty at this point. So because we're just spawning it, right? So there's no reason why we can't have that be clone. Okay, so then when we have new weapon types, we can put their collision box into their hitbox, basically, into this. Okay, so the collider is going to be spec.collider.clone. And that way we don't have it hard-coded here. Oops. Okay. That feels pretty good. This will give us flexibility too if we make a new spawn behavior. We could, for instance, have something like a spray of weapons in particular directions. Yeah. We could also have. We should also consider things that are not projectiles, so they don't inherently have velocity themselves, or rather, maybe they don't last very long. I'm thinking of something like like a Simon Belmont's whip or something. There's a weapon there. There's a thing you can collide with, but it's not flying. All right. Though, although this system does say throw weapon, it doesn't say, you know, swing weapon. Okay. So let's put a to do here. In fact, I think it's probably better than to return this. We actually panic. That way we remember to do that if we didn't before, and we're not sitting there wondering, why doesn't my weapon throw? Throws whip at horde, exactly. So before so before we go on and do anything else with this, I want to make sure it's still working, because we changed a lot in this file. Um, Obviously, it's like, hey, you're not constructing these. Yeah, I know I'm not. Get over it. Um, let's make sure that we are still. Okay, so we're still throwing our weapons. Oh, those crabs. Oh no. They have armor. They have a lot of health. Um, yeah, so in this case, we just verified that this is still working. We changed a lot in here. God, it feels really nice to have that sort of confidence, doesn't it? Yay, Rust. It doesn't guarantee that what we wrote was correct, but it definitely guarantees that what we wrote um, did not violate any compiler guarantees. Okay. Chocolate is how we're getting through it. Um, yeah. So we talked about having facing weapons. So let's figure that out, because I think what we should do is have, in addition to, maybe it could be part of the movement bundle. I'm not sure yet, but we need something like, which direction was the player facing, and that way we can implement that, throw in the direction the player was last facing, right? So maybe what we do here is, um, so we have mute velocity, mute transform. Let's make, we have stuff in here about, the movement bundle just has velocity, right? Maybe we make something similar to this. Before we do that, before we change that, let's make a commit. Okay. Yep. And this is session 15. My goodness. 15 separate sessions working on this thing. It barely feels like a game at all. So we're at generalize weapon spawns. So they can be extended to new weapon types. Okay. Yeah, well, I can't sign it. Yeah, fine. Excuse me, I'm going to have to fix this. My git config is borked. Yeah, at average stream time, that's only a week or so. That's true. And if I had known more what I was doing when I started, I'd be even further along. But we're learning as we go. Give me one moment to fix my git config here. I messed up my GPG key. Oh, right. I need to remove that from the global. And then it should work. Okay. Okay, let's try that commit again. Yep. Okay, good. I had, I have some personal repositories on here and some that require GPG signing, and I had tried to make sure that each of those were specialized so that they do the right thing in the right repositories, but apparently messed it up. Okay. Okay, so we've got weapon spawns. Okay, so now what we're going to do is make a new component here. Debug default. And this is going to be facing. And this is vec3, just like everything else. Okay, so I don't know, maybe you know the answer to this, Chris. Can bundles have optional components? Can I do option facing? Let's find out. No! Yeah, okay. So we'll just put it in here, and oops. And then for everything that we don't specify it on, if we use the dot default on there, right, it should be fine. No optional bundle components. Okay. So what we wanted, why did I put that in there? Okay. What I want to do is to update this when the player moves. And that way, when we go to throw a weapon, we can look at that component. And right. Okay, so we're going to get not just that, we're going to get mute facing. Okay. So if direction there's a method on vec3 that's like is 0. Let's just compare it to vec3 0. And we can do this not equal 0. So if we, what we did above was we said, well, what keys are pressed? And then we added all those up into the direction. Justin, that's a great idea. We should allow the implementation to throw other characters. Like, our character should be able to do a body slam or something. That would be great. Okay, so if the direction here is not 0, then we want to say facing dot value equals direction. I need to make that public. I don't know why it isn't on velocity as well. No big deal. I think it's because I wanted to have these methods, but yeah. Okay, so what this will do is it will record the direction the user was facing last time. Justin, sometime I should just have you on here, and you can just be in the background providing commentary and on audio. We'll have a grand old time. But I am enjoying the chat. Thank you. Okay. So we're recording uh, on every loop what the last direction that they were facing in. So even if the player stops and doesn't move, um, then then they will be facing in that direction at the beginning. Now we need to make sure that when the player, we can't just do default here. We need to give the player a facing direction to start out with. And we'll say I'm just going to say vec3x, right? And then we'll do they're not moving. That way, when they spawn, they don't have to start moving in order to in order to start throwing their weapon. Okay, we'll just pick X, so they're throwing to the right, which means they're facing the right. And now let's make a short commit on this, and I want to let's run the project, run the app. Okay, what did I do wrong there? Line 209. This is probably our weapon code. Right. I was surprised I didn't see Rust Analyzer complaining about that, but I wasn't looking closely. Okay, so there's no effect there because we have the 4 directions weapon. Hey, I got out of the fray. So yeah, that looks good. So now we can, if we like, implement the facing weapon spawn behavior, because we'll have, we can add it to this query, right? And then in this branch, we can say a lot of this stuff. We're gonna say vec3z. We need to figure out the angle from the direction the player is facing. So query, where did I get that? I need to put it here. Okay. I think I want to truncate. Maybe we'll do angle between. I don't know if that's the right direction, but we'll find out. Okay. So we'll oops. Okay, so we're not actually returning anything there. But we will Interestingly, this facing value is also kind of the direction. So maybe what we do is say let direction is facing dot value. And we probably need no, it's copy. Okay. And then we'll use that for the translation. So it's be similar to this random, right? Direction times spec.distance, and then we'll rotate the weapon as well. Rotate, please. Rotation. And then we will do basically the same as this. So we can copy pasta that. Hello, Bianca. You have come to join the stream. Okay, so with very little code, we just implemented that thing I was talking about. Oh, maybe we could do it later. We just tracked the direction that the player moved last. So let's rather than changing, like adding a new weapon, right? Let's change what the dagger does. So let's say it spawns in the facing direction, right? And then we'll see what happens. And then we'll try it at random, because that'll be fun too. Okay, so my rotation is wrong, but you notice that it was firing off in the at the angled directions as well as in the forward and backward directions. So we need to fix the rotation there, but let's see. Actually, so the problem is I was measuring it from X, but it needs to be positive Y, because all the weapons in the sprite sheet are pointing upward. So what we need is to rotate it, and I think we can look at what we did here, because these still, we started from vec y. I think if it's a negative, yeah, because vec y, negative x, negative y, x. Interestingly, we could probably change this, iteration with an index into just angle between vec3y. But let's try this and make sure that the rotation of the weapon is coming out correct. No, now it's backwards. Okay, so so we probably need to invert this. Let's do vec3y angle between direction. Let's try that, and if that doesn't work, we'll try something else until it looks right. Okay, so I'm moving up. Note that I go at an angle and the daggers fly at an angle, except that's wrong. That's wrong. Okay, let's try to invert it. What would it be exactly? Okay, so angle between should always be going counterclockwise. The question is, let's go to that and see the angle. Angle between two vectors. Intermediate vectors, however, they must be non-zero. Okay. Arc cosine. The dot product. Divide. Okay, so they're dividing out the distances here. The order does matter. Here's where my math is failing. Let's try negative y in this one. I don't think that that's correct, but I'm really curious about... Okay, so that's definitely not correct. I will beat you with the blunt end of this knife. And if I do negative y, angle between direction. The other thing I could think about is maybe think about it in terms of x and then subtract this pi over 2. Because if it's going to the right, the angle is going to be 0, but normally the sprite is pointing up, so we want to rotate it backwards 90 degrees, right? Backwards pi over 2. I'm still not certain about the order of arguments here. It does matter, because you might get the acute angle or you might get the obtuse angle, depending on which order you do the dot product in, right? So I'm wondering if this will get us what we want. We're just gonna have to do some trial and error here. Okay, that's correct. That looks correct. Let's go. That looks correct. Okay, I need to get out of the way here so I can survive long enough to see. Okay, we're still facing the right... Okay, I think this is doing what I want. No, that's still wrong. It's possible that it only goes to negative 180. Or what? Yeah. Okay. I think it's actually not an issue of giving the acute or the obtuse. It's only it can only go 0 to 180 or 0 to pi or 0 or maybe it's pi to negative pi, and we need to actually it's really just the down direction that's a problem. Negative. Okay. So we can puzzle this out. So if we're going up, it's fine. If we're going up and right, it's fine. If we're going up and left, it's fine. If we're going, I think if we're going right or if we're going left, it's fine. The problem is when we're going, I imagine that down is fine. Let's test this out again, because I wanna see which directions are a problem. No, down is wrong. I can't. I need to. We're gonna have to fix this. I'm getting bombarded way too soon. Can I just here? Let's move these guys out of the way. My goodness. There's like some of the toughest guys in the game are right next to me when I spawn. Okay. More space, more personal space. Thank you. So it's upside down if we're throwing it, if we're going down, right? If so, the problem is if there's any negative y component. I'm just going to do it the dumb way. uh, because I think that that's probably going to be the solution here. We're just going to put in, we're going to be dirty as hell. We're going to just put a this is going to be the thing. If we're here, we're going to do, we can still do this. Come on, angle between. Where you got beach reset from? Okay, and then we'll add pi/2. I think this is going to solve this. Let's give this a shot. This is really janky, and there's probably some like pure mathematical way that I should be doing this. Just to be clear, give me the sign. Yeah, okay. Okay. Down. No, it's okay. So now it's flipped. Oops, wrong one. Be evil here. I can't see the down. Okay, that's correct. That's correct. Okay. So basically what I did here mathematically is I did a mirror. So if the y is down, I'm measuring from negative x. So we're still going counterclockwise in the angle measurement. And then but it's like a flip mirror of the upper half of that. There's probably a better mathematical way to do this, but what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to put what is the correct mathematical way to deal with this. Okay, now let's oh man, you're having gumbo tonight, Justin? Oh, so jealous. Okay. So let's go ahead and try out the random as well, and we'll see if that works, and then we can look at whether, and this will be wild because you won't have any control over it. Now what we could do is enhance this such that the weapon type gives you the number of projectiles, and then that goes into the spawn behavior. Something to think about. And that's also interesting because we could say rather than directions, it's 4 directions. Maybe it's like, we could call it surrounding or circular or something like that, and then you could give it 2 and it would fire forward and back. You give it 4, it would fire up, down, left, right. You give it 8, it would fire in the 8, like and so forth. Or we could just have it divide up the angles. Anyway, okay, here we go. Let's try random and see what happens. We'll have no control over this weapon, and there it goes. And it's also firing off. It is doing the same problem that we got in this section. So I'm going to put this same logic down here. to put this in here, and then we're going to say direction, right? What's wrong? I'm missing, oops. It did not copy that correctly. We need that. Oops, come on, semicolon. There we go. Okay, so again, this is not correct, but we're moving on. And it's kind of fun because we'll get the weapon at all sorts of weird angles. And you have no control over it. It's pretty ineffective. Okay. At least the enemies can't follow that fast, and they got bunched up on there. Okay. The other thing that we can do is when the player changes direction. So let's first of all make a commit for this. Yeah, we don't care about the LDTK file. We're not using btreeset. Why did that get added? Because I type too fast and sometimes it gets confused. Okay, so we're not, that's fine. We don't care about that. We don't care about that. I'm going to restore this to 4 directions for the dagger. Okay. So what we did here was added the facing. Track the direction the player is facing, so we can throw weapons that direction. And there we go. Okay. So the other thing that is pretty cool is that when in here in player movement, we can also look at the X component of this facing vector, and we can change, we can flip the sprite based on which direction they're facing, right? So what's the X component of that? And if it's less than 0, we can say it flipped, and if it's not less than 0, then we can say they're facing to the right. So we need that sprite bundle doesn't have, well, hello. I think it's Texture Atlas sprite. Yeah, that's what we want. Okay. So let's see, call that sprite. So then we can say if facing dot value dot x, let's just do that. If that's less than 0, then we want to do sprite. This is a Texture Atlas sprite. Let's look at the fields on that. Flip X. So we want to flip X, right? Flip X. And honestly, we can actually just, we don't need this branch. We can say sprite.flipx equals is that less than 0. And then let's give that a shot, because what I want to see is when we move the player, if they start moving to the left, they face left. If they start moving to the right, they face right again. But they start facing right. We may be having this a bit. Yep, see, look, he turns his head when you go left. He doesn't have a down look, so we don't get that. But at the very least, like, it doesn't feel like he's moving backwards without turning his head. So that's a little bit better. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's the little things. Oh, hey, it's the slow pokes. They were way over there. Honestly, I think the Cyclops guys are too weak. Kill them easily, but those crabs, man, those crabs. Yeah, no more moonwalk. This particular sprite sheet doesn't have uh, animations for any of the characters. So I mean, we could make him open and close his helmet, but yeah, none of the characters have any movement built into them. So it might be better for sort of a turn-based thing, where you're not actively moving, but when you move, then all of the entities in the game get a move, which I think a lot of roguelikes are like that. I was thinking of the other day. Did any of you play Zine? I forget what the name of the first one was, but like if you got both games, you got the Dark Side of Zine and then something Zine, and you put them together and they were World of Zine, and you can go between the two. Anyway, I played a lot of that game when I was a teenager, and I beat the whole thing, but it was very much a like RPG dungeon crawler type thing. You had I wouldn't call it 3D. It wasn't like Wolfenstein was 3D, but it was more like they had fixed projections. So you had a view into the space that you were looking in, but it was pretty small, and you had a bunch of UI around it. But the thing was, when you moved one step, all the enemies that were near you could move a step toward you. But if you didn't move, like, you could think about, well, what is my strategy going to be? And you could, wait and not be rushed into having to deal with this enemy coming onto you unless you moved. But movement also included, you could take an action like fire a projectile or cast a spell or something, and then the enemies could move as well. So you could hit them from afar, but they would also have the chance to move toward you. Okay, that is to say, with there's no walking animation for this character. We are just sliding along. And it's sort of okay for our enemies, but when you're actively moving the player, you like a little bit more visual feedback. So we may have to abandon this tile set at some point, which is fine. But it's been pretty good for learning a lot of this stuff so far. Okay. So this is a really small change. Now, I am kind of sitting here going, should this be a separate system? And I kind of feel like it should be. So the other possibility here is that it's not just the player that can face left or right. some of these enemies kind of have some directionality to them. So maybe what we do, maybe what we do is we pull this out. I kind of like that idea. The challenge is for enemies, we'll need to make a system that tracks which direction they're moving, and updates their facing based on the same. Yeah, we remember we got rid of that. Now we can do that in chase player. And then in movement, we can choose the direction of the sprite. Yeah, I like that idea. So let's do, because we put this in the movement bundle, right? Import that. We can do facing dot value is direction dot normalize or 0. And then, so now that we're tracking the direction the enemies are facing, which might also be useful if they're firing projectiles on an interval. Ooh. And they're not just chasing you. Okay, and then in the movement, let's make, here's our plugin. Okay, we're gonna say update facing, or update sprite direction. Yeah. And this is going to be, we're going to have the facing, and then we're going to have, hello, mute texture atlas sprite. So for anything that has a sprite and has a facing direction, we can take this out of there. And that's all we have to do. And then we can remove all that extra stuff from here. So we're updating the facing in a different spot than we are changing the sprite. There's a little bit of inefficiency in that, but on the other hand, we're only concerned with updating the facing direction based on the movement of either the player or the enemy, right? So yep. Now we need to be sure that all of these, I don't know, we're not using the rats yet. All of them are facing right. This one doesn't really matter. The top, the green glob. The bat is symmetrical. The ghost should turn. The cyclops is facing right. The crab, it doesn't matter. The spider doesn't matter. We don't have rats yet. We don't have a gray and brown rat. But the thing is, they're kind of facing facing left. Whatever. Maybe we just won't have those enemies. Okay, so let's see if this works, and then that'll be generic over anything that has a facing component. Note the ghosts look like they're coming, they're, and they're moving toward me. Look, I go back and forth. Well, I killed it. Go over here. Oh, the ghost turns. So that's good. Yeah, easiest way to fix any problem. Maybe we just won't do that. Yeah. So if these Cyclops have a bit more health. So note I went past him. He turned this other direction. Go past him on this other side. He turns the other direction. So that's working correctly. And it's also smaller. So like if we wanted to get rid of this behavior, we can just remove this system and not care. I like that. Okay. Update sprite flip when changing direction. This is very Kingdom of Cross. Oh my gosh. I don't. Let's look at this. We'll follow Justin's link here. Kingdom of Cross. Has anyone else seen this? I've except that was antsy antsy characters there. Apogee, yo. Those were the days, man. Apogee. Okay. And let's push that. Let's look at our to-dos. So we kind of generalized the weapons. We didn't make any new ones. Starting to run out of time. I'd like to think about spawn behavior. We probably want to do something in, because we had this huge system here where we were like, spawn it, but make sure it spawns inside the level, which is interesting. Okay. But we're not using this. We're also not using this thing that we did a while back where we went through the dimensions of the level and found locations that were valid to spawn in. We pre-computed that on level load. And there's all that fun stuff about walls. That is a long system that we mostly copied. Okay. So I feel like we should be thinking about this. What I want to avoid doing is like looking at something on this entity that I put in here that specifies the spawn order. I would prefer to do something on the level that says spawn 5 crabs and then or spawn like 20 ghosts and then you know, 3 crabs and 10 spiders and finally 30 cyclops. Like love to do something like that. Um, and then have it use the spawn timer to uh, to get those entities. And these entities could be in the level, um, but not active. And then we would clone them. So like spawn and like take this entity and give me a new one with all the same components, and then remove the component that we're putting on it that tells it this thing is not actually active and visible. Because I really would, yeah, I would really rather just have these are the types of enemies I have in this level, and then separately define here's the quantities and the order that they spawn in. And that should be data. I'm not sure how to do that yet. So sorry, I'm looking at what options I have in here. Can be out of level bounds. No. Um, okay. Maybe this is better for next time. I think there's a lot I still need to learn about LDTK. Maybe there's answers in here. Um, but I'm not going to spend the rest of this session trying to figure that out. Um, yep, I don't really think that there's anything else we can reasonably do today. Uh, we will visit that next time. Let me put in some more clarity here and for what to do next time, and then we'll leave that till the next session. Um, so like specify enemies to be spawned as data, but not in the LDTK entities layer. Another option might potentially be that we could make multiple entity layers, but I'm not sure how that works. Okay. Update to do. And I am personally kind of wiped. Been a big day already, so thank you for bearing with me and showing up. And I feel like we learned a lot. We can do more stuff later now that we've done a little bit of refactoring on the weapon spawning. And yeah, so and thank you. I always love it when you all show up in the chat and give me encouragement and send me jokes and things. So keep showing up, keep doing that. I love it. And otherwise, I'll see you next time, and have a good week.